All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I'm creating a series of videos that are based upon the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series. I'm on tools and testing, and I'm into cross-browser testing, and now we're talking about handling common accessibility problems. So again, we've already talked about cross-browser testing overview, the intro to cross-browser testing, the strategies for carrying out testing, and we just finished the handling common HTML and CSS problems, and then the handling common JavaScript problems. So after this, we've got the implementing feature detection, the introduction to automated testing, and the setting up your own test automation environment. All right. It says now let's turn our attention to accessibility, providing information on common problems, how to do simple testing, and how to make auditing and automation tools, or how to use them for finding accessibility issues. Now, again, accessibility means different things to different people. I try to look at it is, the way I try to look at it is whatever you're creating, you want to make the user experience as equal as possible to everyone. Now, that's a misnomer in itself because I don't know what it's like to be sight impaired. I wear glasses. I don't have the best eyes in the world, but at least as of right now, I can see. All right. I don't have the best hearing, but at least as of right now, I can hear. What I'm talking about here is we want to make the user experience as gratifying, as good as possible for everyone if we can do that. So the author here says, when we think of accessibility in the context of web technology, most people immediately think of making sure that it works for people with disabilities, such as visually impaired, people with motor function impairments, people with hearing impairments. It says, however, it's wrong to just think about people with disabilities. Really, the aim of accessibility is to make your websites apps usable by as many people in as many contexts as possible, including users of mobile devices, alternative devices such as TVs, watches, etc., users of older devices that may not have the latest browsers. This is a key one here. Users of lower spec devices that might have slower processors. And I guess going along with that, when you think about it, one of the things that we talk about is not everybody has access to high-speed internet. All right. So as it says, this whole module in a way has been about accessibility because cross-browser testing wants to make sure everyone and anyone and everyone can use a site. All right, so what is accessibility? That was earlier on, defined accessibility more completely and thoroughly than is done in this article. So this article will cover cross-browser and testing issues surrounding people with disabilities and how they use the web. As it says, we've already talked about responsive design. We've talked about performance already. Notice it says I would say basically almost everything in web development. It's not about 100% success or not. 100% accessibility is pretty much impossible to achieve. Not only that, even if you think you've achieved it, unless you are someone who is in that situation, you can't understand. All right? Rather, as it says, it's more about making a reasonable effort to make as much of your content accessible to as many people as possible via defensive coding, sticking to best practices. All right, so it says here they're going to talk about some main issues that arise around web accessibility connected to specific technology, and some of these have already been discussed. I would even take it to the point that most of these, either directly or indirectly, have already been discussed. It says accessibility is morally the right thing to do. It's a good thing for business, but it's also a legal requirement in many parts of the world. All right. We've talked about semantic HTML, as it says, when elements are used for their correct purpose. Most people equate semantic HTML with the HTML5 tags. I've gone over stuff like this before. But for instance, if I go in here, I don't know what I just did there, but how about this? Images. And here we go. And if I type in here HTML5 semantic tags, and let's just grab this one right here. All right, this one is right from W3 Schools. And basically it says these kinds of tags, these are the ones that were added for HTML5, are going to be used for their intended purpose. Yes, that has a lot to do about with semantics and accessibility. But that said, it's more than that. All right, we talked about, or hopefully you've heard this before, when we talked about things like tables. Years ago, what people would do is they would create a big table for any website that they were creating, and then they would go in and add tables inside of that for each page they were creating. So in other words, they were using the table tag for something for which it was not designed to do. All right, there are other tags. There are tags that are meant for a purpose, but have done, that in the past did things like center text. And people use them not for the right purpose, but because they wanted their text centered. I go back to it. Maybe I've even talked about it in this series. I don't remember. But I always referred to it as the silly puttying of HTML. Now, for those of you too young to understand what silly putty is, or if you've never heard about it, basically you got this little tube. You open it up and it was this stretchy goop that looked like this. All right, and a lot of times on Sundays, back in the days when people read newspapers, and back in the days when your Sunday funnies or your Sunday comics were in color, you would take the silly putty, press it against the Sunday comic, then you could stretch it and distort its shape. Well, what I've mentioned is that's what a lot of people did over time with a lot of the HTML tags. They did them for something that you could use them for, but not necessarily something that you should use them for. So, as they mention here, semantic HTML is accessible right out of the box. Such content is readable by sighted viewers, even if you don't do anything, or if provided as it says you don't do anything silly like hide it, but will also be usable by assistive technology like screen readers and has other advantages too. The most important quick win in semantic HTML is to use structure of headings and paragraphs for content and for the reasons they were supposed to be used. In addition, your content should make logical sense in its logical order. I wouldn't even call it an issue, but one of the things about that is when you start talking about these tags. All right, I mean, I've listened to people talk about what's a section and what's an article. Should you have a section inside of an article inside of a section? Again, remember that when the W3C puts this stuff out, they're not requirements. All right. Basically, they're, for the lack of better words, they're suggestions, they're recommendations. So not everybody agrees that this stuff should be used in the exact same way. All right. It says, as a test, turn off your site's CSS and see how understandable it is without it. You can do this manually by just removing CSS from your code, but the easiest way is to use browser features. Well, I've done things like that before. All right, I'm not going to run through this right now, but literally what they're talking about, if I were to go out to a simple website, if I went out to right here, which is the Journal Sentinel, I'm originally from Milwaukee, so I still get that electronically. And if I came in here, in fact, I don't want to do it like this. All right, but if I came in here, looks like this is the only place that I've got CSS, but I'm going to guess it's probably not. I'm just going to try to do this. I have no idea if this is going to work or not, but I'm going to remove it. I guess I can't. All right, there it is. And I'm going to see if I can possibly get rid of that, save it. All right, I'm going to call it journal.html. I don't even know if this is going to work. It probably won't, but who knows? Well, actually, it doesn't look much different. Some of the stuff has been removed here, but what you're going to find, and I'm making this much harder than it has to be, is it's going to look very generic in the way it looks. All right. I think, maybe a better example of that would be this. Let's see. This is the, no, I don't want to use that. Let me pause for a second. In fact, let's end this first one and I'll go and try to find something that I can use.